So the comic book industry is so synonymous with superheroes that sometimes it's easy to forget that some of the best comic book stories out there aren't about superheroes at all. One of those amazing stories is We Three by Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely, the creative team that gave us one of the best Superman stories of all time, All-Star Superman. So let's take a look at part 1 of We Three. Part 1 starts with this man running on a treadmill and something is going to be outside of his window watching him. The creature that's watching him begins to get closer and closer to the house, looking through every window. It sees a room full of drunk men surrounded by guns, and then we see in the chimney there's something else watching them. The man is then going to hear something outside of his door, and he's going to stop running on the treadmill and he's going to grab 2 guns. The man is then going to just open fire on the door, hoping to hit whatever was on the other side, and as he kicks the door down, he's going to be really confused. But before the man can say anything, his body is going to be riddled with so many bullets that it's going to split him directly in half. We then see that the creatures are actually these cyborg animals that have obliterated everybody inside of the mansion. And just as the cyborg animals cross the gate to the mansion, they're going to detonate a bomb, blowing up the entire estate. The issue then cuts to this newspaper saying a man named Guerrero was assassinated. And as this woman is reading it, in the background we see a truck saying pet supplies. But in reality, inside of the truck is the cyborg animals and their human handlers. We then see the animals being transported to a secret military base, meaning that these are actually weapons of the military. Back at the base, some scientists are going to take off the cyborgs' helmets, and it's here that it's revealed that the cyborgs are actually just a normal dog, cat, and rabbit transformed into killing machines. The issue then cuts to a scientist talking to a senator, and he tells the senator that using cyborg animals, they're now able to do things that they never could before. The scientist says that using a colony of cybernetic rats, they're able to build a jet engine from spare parts in less than 48 hours. And this is just the beginning. The scientist goes on to explain that these are going to be the future of warfare. Using cybernetic animals, there would be no need for men or women to die on the battlefield anymore. And using this controller, the scientist can make these rats do anything that he wants. To prove this, the scientist is going to make one of the rats with a drill on its head kill one of the other cybernetic workers. This is going to make the senator really uncomfortable, and he's going to say, "You wanted to show us one of the higher prototypes, right?" The issue then cuts to the Weapons 3 project, and its lead scientist, Dr. Roseanne Berry. Dr. Berry explains that the rabbit was designed and trained to deliver bombs and poison gas. The dog is basically a miniature tank, and the cat is a lethal stealth machine. But that's not all that they gave the animals, because Dr. Berry is going to ask number 1, the dog, whether he wants to say hi to Mr. Washington. As Mr. Washington says, "Hi, hello, how are you?" the dog is going to say back, "I am good, are you good too?" This is going to really disturb the senator, and he's going to say, "My God, it can't escape, can it?" Number 1 is going to be very confused, and he says, "Are you too?" The lead scientist then says that number 1 won't bite. He's a loyal dog who will only hurt the enemies of our nation. And the senator says, "This is astonishing. Good dog, good dog." And number 1's gonna look at him saying, "Good dog? Is good dog?" The senator is still gonna be really disturbed, and he's gonna ask, "How is this even possible?" And the lead scientist explains that he's still only a dog. He's not gonna be able to ever recite Shakespeare or anything like that. The general accompanying the senator then says, "Well, feed up the animals, feed them all up. They've definitely earned it. But the Guerrero assassination is going to be the end of the line. We're decommissioning We Three." Dr. Berry is going to try to protest, saying that these animals have seen more progress than any other, and this is years of her work. But the general says that the decision has already been made, and Dr. Berry's status with the military is under review as it is, so there's nothing that they can do. Hearing this, number 1 gets confused, and he says, "Decommish? Word?" And number 3, the rabbit, just says, "No, grass. Eat, now, eat." The general then explains why they're decommissioning the Weapon 3 project. And he says that they need animals that were born for this, that were bred into this, not animals that were picked up and shoved into suits. He says these animals were hotwired into this machine for any longer than anybody anticipated or ever intended. And he says what he sees are 3 pissed off little animals. He then tells the lead scientist, Dr. Trindle, to smarten up and put the animals out of their misery. Over the next couple of pages, through the security cameras, we're able to see that the animals are getting prepped to be euthanized. The animals see everything that is happening, almost like they know that they're about to die. But Dr. Barry is going to set the animals free, and as she tries to leave the building, she's going to be shaking so much from what she just did. Dr. Trindle is just going to think that she's upset because she got fired and the animals are going to die, but she knows that these animals are dangerous and she just let them go free. And as a way to escape, the animals are going to start slaughtering any military men or scientists who tries to get in their way. Dr. Barry then knows that the animals are coming her way. She thinks that she's going to be next, and as she opens the door, the animals are just going to run right past her. And the animals from the Weapons 3 project are finally going to be free. We then see Dr. Trindle on the phone, and he says everyone's been alerted. No, they won't get far. They'll be hunted down, destroyed. Dr. Trindle then tells the general that they can't survive for more than a few days without their medication. These aren't pet animals. They're surgically engineered, bio-modified organisms. They're trained to kill by the US military. They're instinctual, amoral. They lack the fear of death that limits human behavior. And that's the only problem. They won't go down without a fight. We then see the 3 have finally made it to freedom. They're inside of this forest, but number 3 asks, what do we do now? Where do we go, boss? Number 2's instincts kick in, and it says, I know, and it just starts to hunt this flock of birds. As number 2 begins eating this bird, it says, no stink, boss, I stay, I know. Number 1 then just says, home. It's dangerous here. We have to go home now. Number 3 then says that number 2 should come with them. They're going home. And number 2 says, no, I stay, I eat here. Number 2 watches as the other 2 leave to try to find a new home, and it just says, we 3 have no home now. Part 2 starts with this group of rabbits in the middle of the field outside of town. Number 3, the rabbit that was experimented on, is going to be running through the field screaming at the bunnies, telling them to run. Because the military has located the 3 lost pets and have begun opening fire trying to take them out. The issue then cuts to Dr. Trindle, the head of the Weapons 3 project, and he's going to be telling the military that the animals will not attack unless they are provoked or think that they are in danger in any way. But the military wants to take these animals down as fast as they possibly can, so they're not going to listen to Dr. Trindle and they're going to engage the 3 animals. The issue then cuts back to the men in the helicopters, and they're going to be telling each other to aim for the head. It's the only weak point on these animals. But nothing the military does works. These animals were given state-of-the-art technology and were trained to kill. The dog is basically a miniature tank, and the cat is a trained assassin that nobody can hear coming. We then see Dr. Trindle on the phone saying he tried to warn them. He told the military not to engage, but he promises they'll find a way to take these animals down. But the animals effortlessly take down all of the military men, and after they're all dead, number 1, the dog, is going to tell them, come on, it's time to go, we need to go home. Dr. Trindle then tells Dr. Roseanne, the woman who cared for the animals, that if the rats can't take them down, then she is going to be their last hope to talk to the animals. We then see the 3 animals going across these railroad tracks, and number 2, the cat, isn't going to want to stay with the other 2 anymore. Number 1 believes that they can find a new home, that they can find a place for them to belong, but number 2 just doesn't believe it. He says that they have no home. Number 1 is going to get angry and say no. Number 2, we 3 obey, we listen to each other, and they're going to get into a massive fight. But number 3, the rabbit, is going to try to get in the middle and stop them, but something else is going to come up behind them. It's the rats that were experimented on and controlled by the military. Hundreds of them come and attack the 3 animals. Number 2 is almost taken down, is almost overrun by the rats, but number 1 says that he's going to protect him, and he begins opening fire on all of the rats. Now, the three animals did manage to take out a majority of the rats, but they were on the tracks for too long, and a train is going to come barreling towards them. Number 3 is going to be able to see the train, but it's not going to be in time, and the train is going to smack right into him. But instead of just destroying number 3, the train is going to explode, destroying the entire bridge, causing number 1 and number 2 to fall into the river below. And number 3 is going to see this and try to run and catch up to them. Number 1 is going to try to save the train conductor from the river, and when he does, he's going to say, "I'm a good dog. I helped the man." Number 1 is going to tell number 2 to go find number 3 so they can get home now, but number 2 is still not going to want to go. He says that number 1 doesn't even know what home is. And whenever number 2 asks number 1 what exactly is home, number 1 just says, "Home is where we don't have to run anymore." And we see that even though number 1 tried to save the man was cut in half. So number 1 thinks it's a good dog. It doesn't know that killing these people is wrong. The issue then cuts to nighttime, and we see number 1 and number 2 walking through the forest when they finally manage to catch up to number 3. But number 3 is in the middle of a road, and this father and son have found him, and they think it's some kind of alien. Number 1 is going to scream at number 3 to get away, to get out of the road, but it's going to be too late, and the man is going to open fire on number 3, hitting it right in the head. And although this doesn't kill number 3, it's going to mess up all of its systems, and it can no longer communicate. The man's dog is going to try to attack the animals, but they're going to be way too fast, and as number 2 cuts the dog's head off, number 1 is going to go straight for the father. We then see the animals sitting on this field, and number 3 is trying to talk, but it just comes out as mechanical nonsense. And number 1 is going to be sitting there sad, saying, "Bad dog, bad dog." Number 2 is going to try to make number 1 feel better by saying, "Are we going to go home?" But number 1 just keeps repeating bad dog, over and over again. The issue then cuts back to the military base, and we see that they're getting tired of sending all of these other animals to try to take down the Weapons 3 project. None of them are effective, and they're not working. We then see that their plan is to use Dr. Roseanne, the caretaker of the Weapons 3 animals, to try to lure the animals into one spot. And they're planning on sending the Weapons 4 animal to take out the Weapons 3 project. Finale starts with this homeless man trying to take shelter from a rainstorm in this shack by the train tracks. When the man enters the shack, he's going to find the 3 pets taking shelter from the storm, and he's going to offer them some food. The man's going to feel a lot of pity for the animals, and he's going to want to take them out of the machinery, so he's going to say he needs some liquor and some tools. But the animals have begun to get sick, and the dog says that they need to get home in order for them to get better. And the man says, "Okay, I'll do what I can to help you out. Just wait here and let me get some tools." As the man leaves, he sees that the military has arrived to apprehend the animals, and they're going to ask him if he's seen anything. And he says, "No, I've seen nothing but you fascist assholes." And as he says this, the military is going to sprint into action, and they're going to grab Dr. Roseanne. The military's plan is to send in Dr. Roseanne as a way to calm the animals down and get them to drop their guard before they send in the Weapons 4 project to put them down. The animals are going to be waiting in the shack for the homeless man to return, but while they're waiting, number 3, the rabbit, is going to sense something, so he's going to go outside. But when number 3 goes outside, it's going to come face to face with a bull mastiff that the military turned into the Weapons 4 project. Number 1 is going to be calling out to number 3, trying to get it to run away, but it's just staring number 4 straight in the face. Number 1 is going to launch itself at the bull mastiff, but at the same time, number 2 is actually going to run away, and this is going to really confuse number 1. Number 2 is going to be confused and ask where number 2 is going. They're supposed to be a team, and they're supposed to stick together and protect each other. And in the midst of number 1's confusion, the bull mastiff is going to bite down deeply into the neck of number 3. This is going to greatly upset number 1, and as it watches this unfold, it's going to get extremely angry and burst into tears. And as the bull mastiff is biting down on number 3's neck, number 3 is going to release a bomb that's going to blow up right in number 4's face. In the midst of the explosion, number 1 is going to try to run away, and whenever it turns this corner, it's going to come face to face with Dr. Roseanne. Number 1 is going to start begging Dr. Roseanne. It's going to say, "Please don't decommission We 3. It doesn't want to die." Some snipers on a nearby rooftop are going to take this opportunity to aim at number one's head, but Dr. Roseanne is going to feel an immense amount of guilt for what she did to these animals, so she's going to push number one away. And she's going to end up taking all of the bullets for number one, saving its life. Number one is going to say bad dog, and it's going to start to run away, dodging all of the bullets from the snipers. But a couple of the bullets are going to end up connecting, and it's going to start messing with number one's armor. Number one at this point is extremely angry, and it's going to be saying bad dog over and over and over again until it comes face to face with number four. Number one is going to do its best to try to defend itself, but number four was built bigger, stronger, faster, and there's not much number one can do to save itself. And just as it looks like all hope is lost, number two is going to arrive and jump on top of number four, distracting number four long enough for number one to launch it through this wall and down onto the highway below them. And this is going to severely injure number four. Number four's systems no longer work, and at this point it's just an angry mess of machinery and animal. It's going to try to attack this police officer, but number one is going to jump in and save his life, and he's going to say, "I'm a good dog. I helped man." The military is then going to use code FIDO, and it's going to blow the head off of number four, saying that was almost a disaster. Number four almost ate a police officer. And in the middle of all of the confusion, number one and number two were able to escape into the sewers. They're going to end up in a field outside of town, and number one is going to say, "We're home. This is our home. We don't have to run anymore." But as we can see, number one has gotten sicker and sicker, and it doesn't look like there's much time left before he dies. Number one and number two are going to find this construction site, and they're going to try to take shelter, but before they can, they see that the military has located them. They're going to start running as fast as they can towards the construction site, trying to take shelter. And as they begin running down the stairs inside of the construction site, number one's armor is going to start to fall off. And for the first time, it's going to realize they are not machinery. They are not machines. They are living creatures. The coat is not them. And number one and number two are going to remove all of their coating, all of the armor, and they're going to leave a bomb behind for the military. We then see number two without any of its armor catching a rat and trying to give it to a very sick number one. Number one is going to be laying underneath a blanket, and he's going to say, it's black here. Is this where our home is? It's so dark." Number two is going to comfort number one, saying, "Yes, we're home." And as it's saying this, a shadow is going to appear from the background and say, "So this is where y'all have been hiding." The issue then cuts to a few weeks later, and we see from this newspaper that Dr. Trindle has actually spoken out against the military for all of the atrocities in the Weapons 3 project. As Dr. Trindle is going to this courthouse, he's going to see this homeless man sitting on the stairs. And we see that the homeless man actually has number one and number two, and they're looking perfectly healthy. Dr. Trindle is going to ask the man, "Doesn't the dog need special care?" And the homeless man just says, "No. All he needs is a little bit of love." As he says this, Dr. Trindle is going to reach into his wallet, grab some money, and say, "Good luck, clever little dog." And Dr. Trindle is going to leave to go testify inside the courthouse, and number one and number two are going to live happily with their new owner. And that was We 3, honestly, some of Grant Morrison's best work. This was such a sad and tragic story, but it ended on such a high note. I'm really kind of sad that number 3, the rabbit, didn't have a happy ending, but the fact that number 1 and number 2 survived and get to live out the rest of their lives is amazing. The artwork was really beautiful, and this was just an all-around amazing story. But let me know in the comments what y'all thought about We 3. If you like this video, follow if you want to see more.